History often remembers its heroes at the moment of victory, but the true measure of greatness lies in the years of sacrifice that come before it. Few lives illustrate this better than that of Nelson Mandela, a man who endured decades of hardship, imprisonment, and personal loss to dismantle one of the most brutal systems of racial oppression in modern history. His story is not merely a political biography, it is a powerful lesson in resilience, moral courage, and the transformative power of forgiveness. A humble beginning in rural South Africa. Nelson Mandela was born on 18 July 1918 in the small village of Mvezo, located in South Africa's Eastern Cape region. His birth name was Rolihlahla Mandela, a Xhosa name often translated as troublemaker, a title that, in hindsight, seemed almost prophetic. He was born into the Thembu royal family, where his father, Henry Mfakanyiswa Mandela, served as a respected local chief. His mother, Nosekeni Fanny, was known for her quiet strength and discipline, qualities that deeply influenced her son. Mandela's early childhood was shaped by traditional African values, respect for elders, community responsibility, and storytelling that passed down history and moral lessons. However, his life changed dramatically when his father died while Mandela was still young. As a result, he was taken in by the Thembu regent, gaining access to better education and exposure to leadership at an early age. Education, identity, and the birth of Nelson. Mandela became the first member of his family to attend formal schooling. It was there that a teacher assigned him the English name Nelson, a common colonial practice at the time. While the name stayed with him for life, Mandela never forgot the cultural roots that shaped his identity. He excelled academically and later moved to Johannesburg, where he worked briefly as a security guard before pursuing higher education. He enrolled in law studies, eventually earning a degree and becoming one of South Africa's first black lawyers. This achievement was not merely personal, it was political. In a country designed to keep black citizens powerless, legal knowledge became a weapon against injustice, a system built on separation. As Mandela came of age, South Africa was tightening its grip under a formal system of racial segregation known as Apartheid. Enacted by the white minority government, apartheid laws controlled nearly every aspect of life. Black South Africans were restricted in where they could live, work, travel, and study. They were barred from voting and excluded from political power entirely. White citizens enjoyed superior housing, education, healthcare, and employment opportunities, while the black majority lived in overcrowded communities with minimal resources. Public spaces, transportation, and even restaurants were strictly segregated. The injustice was systematic, legal, and relentless. Mandela was deeply disturbed by this reality. What began as frustration soon evolved into action. The African National Congress. In 1944, Nelson Mandela formally entered political life by joining the African National Congress, an organization that had been fighting racial injustice since 1912. At the time, the ANC was largely cautious and elite-driven, relying on petitions and appeals that produced limited results. Mandela, along with a new generation of young activists, believed that this approach was no longer enough in the face of deepening oppression. Together with peers such as Walter Sisulu and Oliver Tambo, Mandela helped establish the ANC Youth League, which injected urgency and mass participation into the movement. The Youth League pushed for strikes, boycotts, and nationwide protests designed to mobilize ordinary people rather than rely on quiet negotiations with the state. This marked a turning point in South Africa's resistance movement, shifting it from symbolic opposition to organized grassroots action. During these early years, Mandela remained firmly committed to non-violent resistance. He was deeply influenced by Mahatma Gandhi, whose campaigns in both India and South Africa demonstrated that moral pressure and civil disobedience could challenge even the most entrenched systems of power. Mandela participated in peaceful demonstrations, labor strikes, and acts of civil disobedience intended to expose the cruelty and injustice of apartheid laws to the world. However, the government's response was swift and merciless. Protesters were beaten, arrested, and killed. Political organizations were banned, leaders were silenced, and censorship became routine. Peaceful resistance was met not with reform, but with escalating violence. Gradually, Mandela was forced to confront a painful reality. The apartheid state had no intention of relinquishing power peacefully, from peaceful protest to armed resistance. By the early 1960s, Mandela reached a critical conclusion. While he still believed nonviolence was morally superior, he no longer believed it was sufficient on its own. The apartheid regime had closed every legal and peaceful avenue for change, leaving resistance movements with few options. Mandela did not abandon his ethical principles, but he adapted his strategy. He became one of the founding leaders of Umkhonto we Sizwe, meaning Spear of the Nation. This secret organization was created as a last resort, designed to apply pressure through sabotage rather than terror. Its mission was to target infrastructure, power stations, government facilities, and symbols of state authority, while avoiding civilian casualties. Mandela emphasized that violence was not the goal, but leverage. Despite its secrecy, the apartheid government soon uncovered the operation. In 1962, Mandela was arrested and later charged alongside several comrades during the infamous Rivonia trial. The defendants faced the death penalty for sabotage and conspiracy to overthrow the state. During the trial, Mandela delivered a speech that would echo through history, calm and unflinching. He explained the moral reasoning behind his actions and declared that he was prepared to die for the vision of a free, democratic South Africa where all people lived with equal dignity. The court spared his life, but sentenced him to life imprisonment, hoping to silence him forever. 27 years behind bars. Mandela spent 27 years in prison, much of it on Robben Island, where conditions were harsh and deliberately dehumanizing. Prisoners performed hard labor, endured isolation, and were denied basic comforts. Yet Mandela refused to allow bitterness to define him. Instead, he transformed prison into a place of learning. He studied languages, history, and philosophy. He mentored younger prisoners and even engaged his jailers with dignity and calm resolve. Despite being offered conditional freedom, if he renounced the struggle, Mandela refused. Freedom without equality, he believed, was meaningless. Over time, Mandela became a global symbol of resistance. International pressure mounted as governments, activists, and ordinary citizens demanded his release. Freedom and the end of apartheid. In 1990, under intense political and economic pressure, the South African government released Mandela from prison. His release marked the beginning of the end for apartheid, but not the end of the struggle. Rather than seeking revenge, Mandela chose reconciliation. He worked alongside former adversaries, including President F.W. de Klerk, to dismantle apartheid through negotiation rather than civil war. Their efforts earned them the Nobel Peace Prize in 1993, a rare joint award recognizing courage on both sides of a divided nation. In 1994, South Africa held its first multiracial democratic elections. For the first time, black citizens were allowed to vote. Nelson Mandela was elected as South Africa's first black president of reconciliation. As president, Mandela focused on healing a nation scarred by decades of injustice. He supported the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, allowing victims and perpetrators alike to share their stories in pursuit of national healing rather than revenge. His leadership demonstrated that power could be exercised with humility. He served only one term, stepping down voluntarily in 1999, setting an example rarely seen in modern politics. A legacy that lives on. After retiring from public office, Mandela continued to advocate for peace, equality, and human dignity through the Nelson Mandela Foundation. He passed away on 5 December 2013 at the age of 95, but his influence remains global. In 2009, the United Nations officially declared 18 July as Nelson Mandela International Day, honoring his lifelong commitment to service and justice. Why Nelson Mandela still matters. Nelson Mandela's life reminds us that real change is slow, painful, and often invisible until it arrives. His journey teaches that courage is not the absence of fear, but the determination to act despite it. In a world still struggling with division and inequality, Mandela's story remains a guide, proof that justice, patience, and moral strength can reshape history. If one life can challenge an empire, then perhaps each of us carries the power to change something too. History isn't just about the past, it's about the lessons that guide our future. Nelson Mandela's life proves that courage, patience, and forgiveness can change the world. If this video inspired you and taught you something new, more powerful stories are coming. If you want to be smarter every day, like and subscribe.